Yo, what's up, everybody? Excited about this week's conversation in the infamous T-Town in Tuscaloosa. We got Sam Luce. Super pumped to see where this conversation goes. But before we get going, wild or funny story, what you got for everybody?
I think I have a wild story.
Okay, all right.
So I've dealt throughout my athletic career quite a bit of injuries. I would
Okay.
say one of them was in high school and it kind of followed me throughout college, unfortunately. But I was up to bat and I hit a foul ball and the foul ball went backwards and hit my kneecap off my knee.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, so total wild freak accident. I don't know of anyone that's ever dislocated their kneecap in that way. And then I did it again 3 days later, trying to be stubborn with a straight leg brace, trying to drive my car. So
Wait, so what is it? It just like what do you just straighten your leg out and it like shifts back in? Like how do you get a kneecap back in place?
yeah, so the first time I did it, it naturally went back when I fell to the ground in pain. So that was
Interesting.
good. The second time, though, I dislocated it while in a straight leg brace. And so luckily I was on the high school's campus. And so one of my friends sprinted to the athletic trainer to go get her. And then she was able to maneuver me down to where she was able to get the kneecap to slide back on.
That's insane. Actually, it makes me think of, that's why I was asking about like straighten it out. I wrestled with a guy in high school that like his would just like while he was wrestling, it would just like shift off to the side and he would like straighten it out and it would like slide back over. And I'm like, bro, it might be time to wrap this up.
Literally.
Well, that's a perfect segue, is I guess like what's like I'm genuinely curious of a little bit of like your backstory and like how you got to this point. Obviously, like you said, it's like you were an athlete. I'm guessing if you were up to bat, softball was the background. And so like what like I guess kind of like take me on the journey a little bit of like then until now and like what inspired you to be in this position today.
That's a great, I feel loaded question too, because there's so many steps across my journey that have gotten me to where I am. I would say originally I'm from California. I played softball growing up my whole life, and the dream was to get my education paid for to help my parents out. And
Right.
so I got to West Virginia, so Marshall University, and everyone would be like, "So, where are you from?" And I'd be like, "California." They're like, "Why are you here?" And I'm like, "I'm here to play softball." And they're like, "Oh, okay, okay." But it ended up being the best decision I ever made and had a great time there. Played 4 years and then was trying to figure out life after sport.
Yeah.
That kind of leads into why I do what I do. I didn't have the resources where I was in regards to student athlete development or enhancement, as we call it here at Bama. And so I graduated. I didn't have much of a network. I didn't have a resume. I had no idea what LinkedIn was. And so just trying to figure it out. I had built a great relationship with one of our administrators, Mr. David Steele. He's a real one. But he was like, "Hey Sam, there's a position open in compliance." And I was like, "Mr. Steele, compliance?" I was in those meetings every year, the same
Asleep.
stories, the
Yeah.
same rules. I was like, "I don't know about this." And he's like, just give it a try. And so I did. And I ended up doing it for 3 years.
Oh
I was
wow.
good at it. I just don't know if it necessarily fulfilled me to how I wanted it to fulfill me. I always wanted to be in the student athlete development space, but going back to having no network,
Yeah.
I wasn't able to get a shoe in. And so it took some time. I ended up getting a call from the University of Kansas to come work there after I was a GA at Marshall and was there for a year in compliance. And then I started volunteering with the student athlete development department. And from there, a position came open. And then I did my second year at KU in student athlete development. And so that then led me here to Bama.
So how did you like not having it while you were there at like Marshall, how did you kind of I guess discover it, right? Like how did you even know it became a thing into like, hey, like I wish I had had that. That would have really helped me expedite the process of like the transition, right? From like athlete into career mode, if you will.
Yeah, for sure. So actually, my junior year, I had a coach. Her name's Sable Lee, and you may be familiar. She used to work at Clemson in student athlete development.
Okay.
And so while she was there, she then had transitioned to work in the NCAA and leadership development. So she had worked for Lamar Pottinger at the NCAA, and she was like one of the coaches that I had that like she saw me for who I was. It didn't matter like good, bad, or indifferent, like whether I was playing or not, injured or not. She just cared about people. And so she was the person that I saw in that role. And I was like, how do I get there? And so she really mentored me and showed me, okay, like you got to hop on these N4A calls, start building that network. And lo and behold, I did that and followed it through. I've had the opportunity to do NCAA programming with leadership development. So total like full circle moment. But she really was the one that helped me get into the space and realize like that it existed, honestly, because I had no idea.
Yeah. So when you like as you got into it, and I guess like at Kansas too, like what was your, I guess kind of like vision in like the area that you wanted to make like the biggest impact, like the most in initially, right? Like I think that everybody wants to like do everything, but right, like the riches are in the niches, right? Like when you can like really hone in on like, hey, like this is my craft, this is what I'm good at. And so it's like as you got into it, what was like, I guess it's kind of a two-part question is initially what was that path of like, hey, like I really want to impact the student athletes in this area, and maybe it changed as you uncovered like, hey, like this is kind of my superpower, this is what I'm really good at, and it may have been the same thing, it may have been somebody different, but like what's kind of been like the discovery process with you?
I would say I've always been pretty personable, able to relate to a lot of people. And so, given my background as having been a former student athlete, I think that helped tremendously as I transition into this space because I've been in their shoes. I
Yeah.
can't say exactly like what it's like for them because everybody's different, but a lot of similar shared experiences. And so, I was able to relate well with the student athletes and then kind of just sneak in like we need to get prepared for life after sport. So, we're friends, like we're cool, we're having cool conversations and I'm like, "Okay, so like what's next?" And then
Yeah.
really start to dive in and figure out, what they're passionate about, making sure they know who they are outside of their sport because that's another thing that a lot of student athletes struggle with. Um and so kind of being able to like sneak attack in a way to where I'm able to help them maybe without them really noticing.
Yeah. So like identity is my jam, right? Like identity, like that is, yeah, I was literally to actually a coach asked me like before I started working with their team, we're sitting at lunch and like an hour and a half in, he's like, literally, if you can sum everything up that you do into one word, what would it be? And I was like, that's so easy, right? It's like identity. And so I think for you, like as you like you said, is like to me that's like the ultimate question, right? Like who are you? And most people like don't really know beyond like a super surface level of like name, school, where they're from, siblings, and like maybe they have a Komodo dragon, right? Like that's about as wild that's about as wild as it gets for most people. And so it's like how have you um helped them like uncover that, and maybe it just as simple as that question of like in their own personal realization that like, hey, maybe there is a lot more to me than I actually know. But how have you kind of gone about like really helping them uncover that, they can write a 200-page book on themselves, it's just they haven't taken the time to sit down and figure out like what are all the elements to that book.
I think basic like level is figuring out like, hey, like what do you like to do when you're not practicing, when you're
Yeah.
not in your sport? And a lot of times, unfortunately, you get the answer like that's all I've known, like that's all that I
Yeah.
do. And so then I really try to urge them to figure out those passions so that they can find themselves in who they are again outside of their sport. I would say leadership programming as well is where you can get a lot of that, guidance or provide them that guidance to figure out, how do they operate and how do they operate with other people too.
Yeah. What is because you said like I think it was with you mentioned before that like you were having conversations or you were on calls with like people within the NCAA about like just leadership development is what does that look like for you? And the reason I ask is I just feel like so many people, coaches especially, is like they use all the buzzwords like without any kind of like meaning behind it, right? Like they'll look at an athlete and just be like hey, like I need you to be a better leader, and then just like leave it at that without being like, here's what leadership means for me and this team, and this is what I need it to look like for you, right? Like there's discipline and committed and confidence, right? There's all hard work, right? Like there's all the buzzwords. And so like just out of curiosity, as you've developed that leadership, like how would you define it? Like what does it mean for you when you talk about it with student athletes?
Yeah, I would for me, like where I go back to leadership is just servant leadership. That's kind of what I've been about for as long as I can remember and really just serving others. I think going back to core values truly is where you're able to figure out, who you are and how you can be as a leader. No leader is the same and like they shouldn't be. And
Yeah.
so making sure they understand who they are to the core, kind of going back to that identity piece to then figure out how they can best lead and understand that people need to be led differently too.
Yeah.
I think just really diving into the topic and letting them figure it out themselves because I don't like to say, this is how I feel about leadership. I want them to figure out, like, this is how I feel about leadership, like, not what Sam thinks.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. Actually, I want to go back. So California to West Virginia. Fun fact: I actually went to WVU, so I know what like that area of the country is like. And so I'm curious because I always say like I'm originally from Birmingham, and like went from there to WVU, and that was like massive culture shock, right? But I always say it's like that's probably one of the best decisions that I made just from like man, it made me thicken some skin up, right? Because every people were blunt. There was a lot of people from New Jersey and Pennsylvania, and it was really important for me, I think, at that time, like in my life. And so I'm curious of like from California to West Virginia, like how did that like help, if at all, like shape and like mold you as a person?
A lot. I am just like you said, like, I'm so glad that I left. Like, when I was playing ball growing up, I always planned to go to a California school. Like, I wasn't ever trying to leave. And so
People in
that was
California never want to.
no, it was never an option. And so then, like, as the recruiting process was like kind of chugging along, Marshall was the best opportunity for me. And so I was like, you know what? Like, let's do it. And culture shock, yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. But I'm so glad that I stepped out of the bubble because you don't realize like how much else is out there and just different places and different cultures. And it's beautiful, that I was able to experience that because had I stayed in California, like I would have just had, this one mindset.
Yeah.
And that's really been able to shape me. And West Virginia has never left me. I actually met my partner my freshman year of college at Marshall,
That
and
is
he's
hilarious.
West Virginia born and raised. So we still go back a lot. So West Virginia now will never leave me.
That's hysterical. So as you like started to like at that time in your life of like started to like grow and develop and uncover who you are like at like a deeper level, is I think one of the things I'm always interested with is as people uncover themselves is like, was it through pain? Was it through pleasure? Was it through maybe like a little bit of hybrid of both? Because I know for me, especially like when I got to WVU, it was like really painful time in my life where I had to like, okay, like we got to do some real soul searching. And so like I'm just kind of fascinated with like how people go about that journey for them. Was it more the pain route? Was it more like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever, I have to share this with everyone, more of like the pleasure side, or kind of a hybrid of both?
Unfortunately, I would say more like you pain.
Yeah.
And so you're gonna get me in my feelings a little bit, but that's okay. But no, because like out of it, like my boyfriend played football at Marshall. And so that is the best thing that happened to me, like while my time was there. I went through 3 coaches in 4 years while
Oh,
I was at
wow.
Marshall, so
Yeah.
we had a lot of turnover. It's not funny, but funny in a way. When I was facilitating for leadership development for the NCAA Student Athlete Leadership Forum, I shared kind of this story with the student athletes to be able to, you know, be vulnerable with them because vulnerability is such a crucial part of learning. And so during my time at Marshall as a freshman, I made the freshman all conference team. Like I
Damn.
started, I
Yeah, yeah,
played.
yeah.
Sophomore year is when I dislocated my kneecap again, right before season started. So by the time that healed, it was just kind of too late. Then junior year got a new coach. Senior year, it's like I just never got back in and played the way that I wanted to play. And so for the longest time, like after I graduated, like I just kind of felt like a failure. It's like my college career didn't go how I thought it was going to go at all. You know, you play high school ball, you're probably like one of the better ones on your team to then go get recruited to be D1, right? And so
Mhm.
it was tough. Like I struggled figuring out like who I was like outside of my sport because my sport wasn't going well. And
Yeah.
so I think that's why I'm so passionate about asking like what do you do outside of your sport because it could be injury like anything could take you away from the game as unfortunate as it is, but we still have to be able to live our life and grow. And
Yeah.
so while it came from pain, I think that pain really helps me be able to resonate with a variety of student athletes. And I'm grateful that it happened because if it didn't, like I wouldn't be who I am today.
Yeah. Do you find too, it's like obviously you want them to like uncover like who they are like beyond their sport. And I think like the natural default is like career. And so
Mhm.
like do you find that and maybe people that like just maybe it's people that know like what they want to do like after college like a little more, but like finding that balance of like not shifting just one simple identity to the next simple identity, right? It's like don't go from softball to lawyer, right? And then that's all you have, right? Do you find that those are like some conversations that you have to have because it's like it is a fine line of just like taking one like I am softball to I am doctor, right? Like or whatever it is. And so do you have those conversations as well?
Yeah, I think that's a great point because you don't want to do that because that's not good either. But I would say exploration is how like we try and push our student athletes to figure out what they want to do career wise. So whether
Yeah.
that's a career tour, we just came back from Atlanta for a summer career tour, or if that's doing an internship or a micro internship, finding out those career passions. But then I'm like, okay, we need to find passions. Like, do you like to be outside? Do
Yeah.
you have a animal or a pet, or are you artsy, or do you like to play video games? Figuring out other things on both sides, to your
Yeah.
point, because if you go just one to the other, then you're kind of just doing the same thing with a different source.
Yeah, and it's almost even like it's almost even worse because like the analogy I usually give is like you roughly practice 20 hours. So this is your identity for 20 hours a week. And then you're going to move into like 40 hours, give or take, or depending on what you're doing. So it's like you're literally hardwiring it like double of like what you've done before. And so it's like I think that, you know, I always go back of like to I think to take it a step deeper of like just being mindful of like the societal timeline of like college, job, marriage, house, kid or kids, like whatever it is, right? And it's like, okay, the next thing. And then like by the time you're some people have done that by like the time they're 25, right? Some people before that. And then it's like, okay, so like what next? And they're like, I don't know, like I kind of met all the society's requirements. And I think that that's why people like struggle a lot because they think that they are supposed to like do A, B, and C like all in a row.
Comparison is the worst. Like whether
Totally.
you're comparing to society as a whole or like your friend group, and that's something that even myself, like I focus on, but trying to tell the student athletes too, because they'll see, whether it's their teammates or another student athlete from a different sport doing well either in their sport or with NIL, and they're like, well, I'm not doing that. And then you may feel down about yourself or denied or delayed, and it's just comparison is the worst. Like if I tell anyone like just try not to compare yourself because it's not going to do anything for you.
Yeah, and I think, well, I know this for like I experienced this too of like along like my own journey is thinking that the thing was going to be the fulfillment, right? Whether it be the money, whether it be getting the dream job, but like that novelty wears off relatively quickly. And so it's like I mean that's literally how identity became a thing for me because like afterwards and like was doing the thing that I wanted to do and was like being around like people that like probably would have envied me for of like, oh my God, like I can't believe you're around those type of people. Like that's amazing. And yet here I was like stuck and lost. And I'll never forget going back to like who you are. It's like my first mentor. It's like she was just like Ryan, like if you want relationships, if you want your business, if you want like yourself to like you have to change first. Like ultimately you have to go inner before like you all like you find all like the external things. And I think that that's really hard for people to understand just because of social media and it's just shoved down their throat of like look at me, I'm so happy. And it's like, are you? I'm not really sure.
Literally.
So how what was the journey from like Kansas to T-Town?
Ooh, okay. So I wanted to continue leveling up within the student athlete development space because I felt a little bit delayed because I had those 3 years in compliance. I was really nervous at first that I'm like, are they going to see the transferable skills? Like, am I going to be able to get into this industry and be able to climb the ladder? I was so nervous at first. And I finally took that step and oh my gosh, it was the best decision of my life. Like sometimes like the scariest one is the best one. And so I did my year in student athlete development at KU and I had seen a job opening at Bama and applied, because it's Bama. And I actually didn't know anybody at Bama. And so
Interesting.
that was
Yeah.
kind of like one of the first times where I'm like, okay, I'm going out on a whim. Like, I don't have any connection. Like, I just gotta be me. And hopefully that's enough to at least get me a call and an in-person interview.
Yeah.
And so it ended up working out. And, I had my first year here at the beginning of July. So I've been a full year in and it's been really awesome. I like it here.
How's the transition from California to Bama?
I feel like my whole journey has prepared myself for this. Going from
Yeah.
California to West Virginia, I feel like everything is just a little bit different. I would say when we moved to Kansas, there was a little bit more to do in Kansas than there was in West Virginia. And then when we moved from Kansas to Alabama, there's a little bit more to do in Bama than there was in KU. So I can't complain. Like it really like hasn't been bad. I mean, athletics here is everything. All
Totally.
of the sports are so competitive and
Totally.
amazing. So it's been really cool to be in this environment.
So it's kind of interesting of I feel like now I've talked to between like player development, student athlete development, and like player engagement, like NFL, like it's
Mhm.
kind of all the same thing. Everybody just uses different like lingo. But I think the fascinating thing is like you're another one. I don't want to say everyone, but I want to say almost everybody I've talked to has started on like the academic side of things before they got into it. Is that like, is that a trend or is that still like kind of the path a lot of people are taking?
I think initially, yes. I think academics has been so long standing within college athletics that a lot of folks that were in academia then transitioned over to student athlete development once it became a thing.
Yeah,
For me, my path was so untraditional. Like, it's not common at all for someone to go compliance to student athlete development. And
gotcha.
so, but yes, I would say like within academics, a lot of people will go to student athlete enhancement, but now with the field really growing and becoming bigger, a lot of folks are able to just get that GA ship straight out of college into student athlete development and then stay in that field now that more positions and opportunities are
Yeah.
available.
Yeah, it's definitely like exploding. I would say I don't know, a handful of years ago, like I didn't know what it was, right? Like I did not know it was a thing. And then like the more I've like talked to people, I'm like, holy shit, like people are really, when I say people, schools are like really like starting to invest like more and more and more into this side of things, which is fascinating because I think that like I'm always curious of, you know, because I think like when coaches recruit, they're like, we care about our kiddos, right? Like we want to make them better young men and young women. And it's like, do you? And I think like now they have these type of resources to say, it's like, here's proof, here's evidence that like if you need the things, we have them for you versus
Mhm.
however long ago, 5, 8, however long ago it was like, well, what resources do you have? It's like, we don't just show up to practice kind of type thing.
That's how it was back in our day, huh?
Like literally, like I mean, honestly, it's like if you like I'm trying to think, like if I wanted to have a conversation with somebody about career, I probably would have gone to like an academic advisor. Like I really don't know who I would have gone to and asked, like, hey, like I'm interested in this. Like, can you help me out? That'd be probably my only resource.
Exactly, and that's how it was for me at Marshall, and there's still, unfortunately, a lot of institutions that don't have this space, and so it was funny, I just was on LinkedIn and was saying how, student athletes, like, if you're at institutions with resources, like, please use them because they're there for you, you just have to grab it and take advantage of it, and then I was like, for my other student athletes that are at institutions that don't have resources like I didn't, you have to reach out to people on your own, and it's going to be
Yeah.
a harder process, but you have to take it upon yourself because if not, like you're going to be delayed into where you want to get to like I was. So
Yeah.
just having to network on your own and not maybe have that mentor per se when you don't have the space at your school, but you still can make it work. It's just going to be a little bit harder.
Yeah, I think it's a Tony Robbins quote. He was just like, most people don't lack resources, they lack resourcefulness. And most of the
Mm.
times we have the things, right? But like we don't capitalize on them, we don't utilize them. Honestly, till the time's too late, right? Like then they're graduated and they're like, hey, like, think you can help me out? It's like, bro, you've been graduated 3 years ago, type thing. So what was your like as you started to get your foot in the door, like what was your best networking tool? Like, how did you start to like get out there? Because my follow up is going to be is I bet now that you're in the space, the more people I talk to is like your LinkedIn inbox is probably filled to the max with people like, can you help me? Can you help me? It's like, dude, I don't even know you.
I'm grateful for that now though, because I remember when I was coming up, I'm like, I felt bad like relying on like my select few that I had. I was like, oh gosh, like I don't want to keep going back and using you for a reference. Like I know you're busy. Like I don't like I hate asking things for people, and that's just kind of how it always been. Like in college, we used to have to do our own fundraising and like ask people for money, and that was like the worst thing for me. Like I could never work in like donor relations at
Yeah,
all.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I hate asking for things, let alone people's money.
And then you're at Bama and they're like, hey, can you think you can give about 3 million?
Yeah, revenue looks different everywhere.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, totally.
But
So yeah, so what was that networking like? What was like your first resources, and then how did you grow and expand that? And then how has that become like part of your message of like, hey, if you don't know where to start, like here's starting place number one. Here's the first easiest thing that you can go home and do today to start expanding that network.
I think number one, make a LinkedIn
Yeah,
for
totally.
sure. Number one, make a LinkedIn. I think going back to how I shared Sable Lee, she was my aunt, and she was the one that kind of told me about student athlete development and N4A and NACTA, like all of those different things. And so being able to get on those calls where you have 20 plus people from different institutions at different parts of their career, like there it is right there. You have people who just started, and then you have had people that have been in the business for 7+ years,
Yeah.
and so both are really like resourceful. Like it's good to be fresh, and then it's good to be seasoned and understand like how that process went. But get a LinkedIn ASAP, do it now. Start connecting with people, but also be genuine.
Yeah.
Don't just connect to connect to connect, because it's not really going to help anyone. People may look at it actually negatively. And
Right.
so just be you, reach out to people, follow up with a little message. I think thanking people always, like if they do spend the time with you, always do follow up. And you just it's a slow build. You just
It
have to just
is.
consistent. I remember seeing like people have over like 500 connections, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I have 200.
Never gonna get there.
I just started like I don't think I got on LinkedIn for it wasn't until I think my second year at KU. So like I was so late to the game, but with time and being in the right spaces and meeting the right people, I think I might be over 500 now. So yeah.
But that's interesting too, is because I was the same way. It's like I really, really, really didn't like make LinkedIn a thing for me till honestly probably within the last year. I just kind of for whatever reason I just always snubbed my nose at it. I don't know if I just thought it as like too corporate-y or just like I don't know I really don't know what my belief was. And till like for me specifically, yeah, it's been like super powerful and like being able to like connect with people. And I think too, it's like most people, I found this out. I think most people are scared to, I won't say most, a lot of people are like scared to like reach out and send messages to people. But going back to like the genuine and authentic thing is, I think when people, to me, that's a vibe, right? Like that's an energy. It's like, do you want something? Then I'm probably not going to respond, right? Or is it like, hey, like I have like a genuine question type thing? Is I think a lot of people, I would even venture to say like most people will reach out like for an answer. And I like that became a thing for me. It's like I'm a clearly a big nerd and like read and like I can't tell I like mention this to athletes all the time. I can't tell you how many times I've reached out to authors just with a question like about the book and they've
Mm,
responded back to me.
wow.
You know what I'm saying? It's like I think most people is because I didn't want anything, right? Like there was no like there's no ulterior motive. It was like, hey, like you mentioned this in the book, and like, can I just ask you a question about that? And they'll a lot of the times like respond back because I think that that gives them a sense of value too, and they're appreciative of like, hey, you bought the book, you took the time to read it. Here's like an actual question, and so getting people to overcome that like hurdle it. It's easy to click connect and then someone accept, but like the next thing of like actually either A providing value to them or B like how do you make it a win-win for both of you, right? Where they get something out of it, but like you're learning and growing too.
Yeah, I think that connection piece, like find something that you can connect with that individual, whether it's where you from or maybe a place you cross paths,
Yeah.
and find that connection piece. Because, for example, like to the bad side of that, like I've had people that have messaged every single one of our like staff members at Bama with the same email, like trying to connect, and it's like I just thought of like, you know, when people like fish and they have like that big net and they just throw it out.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's not fair. Like you mess with those fish. Like at
Yeah.
least like just do the thing where you just reel one and do
One
that.
end
Like
at a time. Yeah.
the whole net, that is not fair to anyone. And so I think that connection piece, like you'll get a better response if someone is like a little nervous to reach out. Just be genuine, but find something to connect with that person. Because if someone reached out to me and was like, "Hey, like I'm an undergrad at Marshall, like I've seen your career path, like can I, oh my gosh, like I would love to talk to them because
Yeah.
I've been there, done that." But the whole like email all, maybe try not to do that.
Well, and I think too is it's something that I enjoy talking about a lot too is and I'm curious, haha, do you teach curiosity? Like is that part of like your conversations with athletes? Because I think that like as I work with whatever you want to call with like helping athletes understand, I'm like, you want to move the needle the fastest is like learn to ask really good questions. And that will connect you. People like that will draw people in. They'll be like, oh my God, this person's so charismatic. Versus like if we got on here and I was like, what's it like to be at Bama? What's it like to be around Coach Say? It's like, oh my God, like everyone like asks the same questions versus like, hey, like I'm gonna take a genuine interest in like you and like, hey, I did my research and I understand that like you're really into like softball and like whatever it is, right? And so it's like, is that part of your conversations with them? Is like, don't be boring, right? Rule one: don't be boring. Ask good questions. And how do you go about that?
So whenever like we have, whether it's a career tour or like a meet and greet, we always kind of help our student athletes with questions beforehand to kind of
Mhm.
get their brains thinking, questions that are maybe a little bit more in depth. I know like a funny way of avoiding the basicness would be like we have a game and I learned it through the NCAA. It's called Calling All My Neighbors. And so everybody gets in a circle and someone will stand in the middle. It's a little bit like musical chairs and it's like calling all my neighbors that are from the West Coast. Okay. So that's something that people can relate to. That's a
Yeah,
good thing. You move around. It's when they say calling all my neighbors with black shoes on.
yeah,
We're like, okay, like let's get a little bit deeper than surface level basic. Like everybody is wearing some type of black on their shoes right now.
right,
Let's
yeah.
hear about, your passions or where you're from, your favorite things rather than just that basic. So that's a little like fun way of like sneaking that kind of education in.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Cause it's like, so I'll speak to like kids is like all of this I shouldn't say all like most of the sports have like summer type camp type things. And so I'll go in there and I'm fascinated because I'll ask them, I'm like, how many of you guys had came here, probably paid $800 or more to come here for 2 days and be around 5, 10, 15, 20, however many division one, two, three, whatever, to be around college athletes and a slew of college coaches. Now, how many of you guys have written down the two questions that you're going to ask them? And like literally maybe one out of like 200, right? And I'm like that it literally is the fastest way you can get more out of that in spending 2 minutes with one of these athletes or one of these coaches to ask a question that's beyond surface level that helps you, right? Like I'll never forget being in front of a soccer kid and I was like, who's your hero? He's like, Ronaldo. I was like, great. I was like, for Ronaldo is in here right now. What's the one question you would ask him? And he was like, how many goals he plans to score next year? I'm like, dude, that doesn't help you. Like, right? And so it's like, I think that there's like, it is a superpower. And I think that a lot of people miss the boat of like, hey, if you were in the elevator with Elon and you only had 60 seconds, what's your go-to question? But like thinking about having that pre-planned, because that's what I tell them. I'm like, I have one question. If I can, like, if we're in the elevator and I only got 30 seconds, it's like I've got one in my back pocket for everybody that helps me like move the needle forward. And so I think that that's a really big missing piece for just people in general because most people are very surface level and most people are very generic.
Yeah, I think vulnerability is maybe a thing
Mm,
that you really have to grow with. We just were in Atlanta, and one of the facilitators shared about how being an executive senior leader, you know, she really tapped into vulnerability. And that was so refreshing to hear because I think it's something that is maybe a little bit later, like maybe historically, vulnerability hasn't really been present in leadership. But I think over the years, and I think when you have that vulnerability, you have that trust, and then you have a staff that wants to work hard for you. And so I think that translates. So even to like being on a team, like if you have a coach that's vulnerable with you, like I'm like, okay, like I'm gonna ride for this coach. Like, let's
yeah.
go.
Yeah. So in your role there, how many sports do you work with? How many different teams?
All of them.
Oh,
All of
damn.
them. Yeah. So we just had a little bit of transition on our team. So we're a department of two now. So
That's
we're
more
really
or less than before.
we had three before.
Okay. Yeah. So
So
less.
we're
Yeah.
going down to two. So now we're really just like split down the middle. And so we'll do like one-on-one with our teams, but we still touch every team in like large like programmatic things like leadership development or career fair, things like that. So that one-on-one career, like let me help you. We have our specific teams, but the rest is just we work with everybody, which I kind of like. At my previous school, I wasn't really, we just had one person for career. And so I think that's great too because he was a beast at what he did.
Yeah.
Shout out Ben Wilson. Incredible. But being able to come here, I get to do all of it. So I think that really helped me become well-rounded. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, no matter what step I take next, like I've experienced every facet of student athlete development. So that's given me some more confidence too.
Yeah, what are some of the differences that like you've uncovered like within the teams that's obviously like helped you grow that may have sucked at the time, right? Because you're like, but like it's really helped you level up, cliche, into like what you do. What are some of those differences between like maybe like football or softball or like men's or women's basketball or like gymnastics to basketball? Like what are some of the different like things that you have to have in the back of your mind to going into like individual specific teams?
Yeah, I would say so. I didn't have softball this past year, but I do this year, so I'm so excited. But just in the bag. Like that's easy. You know, you're
Yeah.
able to relate so
Oh
well
yeah,
when it's
yeah, yeah, yeah.
played growing up. And so that's always an easy transition. I think with the other sports, it's just building those relationships, showing up to their practices so they see you, being around the dining hall. That's something that this year, like I'm really going to prioritize. Because it really does make a difference. It's just them seeing you around and knowing like, oh, she's at practice, like she cares. And I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, I do. Like I really want to help you.
But it's like uh, uh I did it on accident. Like the very first team like I ever had, it just happened to be like it was close to me. So like I could go to and from like really easy. And like before I ever at first they were like, who's the weird guy standing in the corner, right? Like we've never seen him before because they didn't know who I was. But like they told me like later on, like for some of the ones that were graduating at the end of the year, and then just like some of the ones like years later, they were just like, yeah, like remember when like you showed up? It was like you didn't have to be here and that like meant the most. And so it's weird how like I didn't even do it. I didn't even say anything to you.
Literally. The other day it was funny because I had taken a couple of football players to go do an interview for one of their classes. And I hadn't really seen them around a whole lot. And they're like, we've been here. And they're like, we just thought like you were mean or something. I was like, thought I was mean. I was like, they're like, no, like you're cool. Like you're cool. Like, thank you so much for taking us. We just saw you always at your desk, like head in the screen. Like we didn't know. So I think too, like I'm like, okay, maybe I need to work better on my body language at my desk.
That's funny. Is so speaking of, do you find I'm sure there are, like what are differences between like male and female sports? Like because I feel like I mean connection's a thing. I would have to imagine probably with females it's probably even more like more important or vulnerability. I don't know. You tell me.
Yeah, it's really hard to say. I think I've been able to build such great relationships with both our men's sport programs and our women's sport programs. So I don't know if I can personally say like there's been much of a difference from my side of things,
Yeah.
but I will say like coming from KU to Alabama, historically, Bama has a lot of success across all of their teams.
Yeah.
And so one thing that like I learned here that's a little bit different is a lot of our student athletes are going to go pro. Like
Yeah.
they're going to go pro, they're going to potentially be in the Olympics. And so it makes my job a little bit more difficult in a sense of like creating that parallel plan for them and showing them that hey, like even though like you may go pro, like for NFL, for example, like is I think down to 2 years now is a good career. Like it used to
Yeah.
be like between three, around three. And so, like, even if you do go pro or even if you do make it to the Olympics, eventually you're not going to be able to compete athletically anymore. Like
Yeah.
that will happen for every single person, whether it's my dad who's just now starting to slow down at basketball at 60 some. Like eventually it's going to stop. And so making sure you have that parallel plan is what we say here because we stray away from like the plan A, plan B,
Yeah.
because you should want to go pro in your sport, like if that's an opportunity that you want to pursue. But still having some type of parallel plan to ensure that you'll always stay on your feet.
Yeah. What do you like I'm a firm believer that we are like emotional creatures, right? Like we are emotional needs. I believe the vast majority of us like we make decisions based off emotion first and then justify them with logic. And so like in your time there, I'm curious like what are some of the more common like emotional hurdles that um you I don't want to say you help overcome because like you don't get rid of stress, right? You manage stress, you manage those things. What are some of those conversations and like more of like the emotional side of things that you see prevalent and common of helping like the student athletes get over?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different emotions, especially across different things, because it could be related to your athletic ability, like whether, you're injured or not. It could be regarding like maybe you didn't do well on a test. It could be
Right,
something with family back home. And so I think what actually has helped me because I don't have a background in sport management, which is
right.
another thing that's pretty common within athletics, especially student athlete development. And so my background is actually in counseling, which I have my master's in. And
Mm,
it's
mm,
ironic because I have one of my student athletes in
mm,
here, right? But I don't
mhm.
have my degree on my wall, okay? Because I don't want them to know. And
Sure.
so I'll have like a student athlete in here and is actually like a really heartwarming little story, but came in here, she's pretty stressed about things and you know, 45 minutes goes by and she goes, "This was really great. It like felt like a counseling session. Like this was so good." And I was like, "Did it? That's good. I'm glad that you got that out of it." Meanwhile, I'm like, "Mhm."
Yeah, totally, totally. Because I feel like I'm a firm believer as I think there's a lot of people. I think everybody like has their own place, right? Like I think like sports psych, I think like psychiatry, I think counseling, therapists, like whatever. Like everybody like has their own place. And I think maybe this is why like the student athlete side is becoming more popular because I think that a lot of people is they're just looking for a little bit of a conversation to like talk to, right? Like people that like like kind of like obviously like with your background of like how to have the emotional side of like the conversation, right? Not just be like, I don't know, like get some rest kind of type thing, right? Like super service level or like it's like you can guide that conversation. But I think a lot of athletes are just looking for that, the ability to walk in somebody like yours office and be like, "Hey, do you have time for like 30 minutes to like just chat?" And I think that that helps out more than anything than, some people don't want to say, "Hey, I got to go see a therapist." And some it is for some people. Um, yeah, cuz I think that that's just in my conversations that's becoming more and more common of like I think they're seeking out I call it like it's almost like you're just a mentor, right? Like, hey, I just
Yeah.
need a friend to like help me guide this and like make sure that I'm on the right path.
And I love it because I love not being tied to a team. Because
Yeah,
sometimes, like as a student athlete, you may not feel comfortable going to someone that you may normally feel comfortable with because you don't know where else that conversation's going to go.
right.
And so I think for me, like, an understanding that mindset, like, I love not being tied to a team because they can just know they can like chop it up with me. And as long as it's not affecting like their physical being or somebody else's, like, what's gonna happen in here stays in here,
Totally.
right?
Totally.
And so I think creating that safety for them is something that like I'm really, really happy about. I have a bean bag in my office. We have some little string lights. And so I like to just create that space where they can kind of unplug from the weight room and the practice field and the training room, like literally just get out for a minute.
Yeah. It's funny. It's I feel like almost like every other one, like player development, student athlete development, like person I have on the podcast, like every other one, like some athlete comes barging in the middle of it, like, "Whoa, bro, I'm on a meeting right now." And they're like, "Oh, my bad." And he's like, "See, they're just like coming in here to hang out." And I'm like, "Yeah, like that's amazing." I think so many people like I think that's just what they genuinely want is like a person that's a friend that they can talk to and trust that is not going to just tell them what like a normal friend of just like I don't know what to tell you, dude, or suck it up or get over it. Yeah, I think that's cool. That's cool. All right, last question. If you were in a stadium with 100,000 people and you could only leave them with one message, what would your message be?
Oh my gosh. Um, be nice to people. Um, because you never know what people are going through. They may not be ready to share, and just at the end of the day, like just be there for somebody. I think that would be my message. I think if people were just a little bit nicer and just a little bit more empathetic and understanding, we would be in a much better place.
I totally agree. It's two conversations ago is she's softball coach at Boston College, and she goes, "I'm going to pull the Ted Lasso," and she goes, "Be curious instead of being judgmental." And she's like, "What I mean by that is exactly what you're saying of like if somebody wrongs you, instead of like judging them, it's like be curious about like what's going on in their life, right? Like you genuinely don't know." And I always relate it to it's like because I always think like I think people should have to be in the service industry for like 3 months of their life, right? Like they should have to go be a waiter, right? For like 3 months. And it's like, I think that you'll really get a deeper level of understanding of like, even like when I eat out, it's like, if it's okay service, it's like, you don't know, like, you have no idea what's going on in that person's life. And this is also like their livelihood too. So it's like, I don't know, it's just like not jumping to conclusion of like, that sucked. I'm only giving you $1 kind of type thing. So I totally agree with you. Totally. Well, cool, dude. Like this has been fun. I really appreciate like, yeah, jumping on, sharing the stories. As I tell everybody, it's like that is the primary like reason like for the podcast is I feel like stories are what move people and everybody gets tired of me running my mouth. And so it's like the more stories like to get out there, it's like the more as people like listen can like resonate and like pick up things from. And so yeah, like I just appreciate your perspective on things and yeah, sharing a story.
No, I thank you for reaching out. I'm like, wait, that's the guy that interviewed Alexander Martin, who's one of my other mentors. So I was like, when you reached out, I was hype. I was like, okay, let's do it.
Wait, so okay, hold on. Before we get off, is like how do you know Alex?
I just reached out. I knew he was in the student athlete development space before, and player engagement development in the
Yeah.
NFL is something that I'm like, hey, like if it ever like fell in my lap, I would definitely go too, like Alexander did. So just reach out to him, and I've been able to connect with him a few different times, and just he's another person that's been able to guide me and be like a sounding board within like the space. So
Yeah. Yeah.
so.
Very, very, very brilliant mind. Very brilliant mind.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. It's funny, him and do you know Ed Jones?
I know of Ed, but I've never met Ed.
Met him. Yeah, I feel like those are two, like as I talk to people in y'all space, like those are the two people of like, I saw your
Mhm.
interview with Alex Martin, or I saw your interview with like Ed Jones. And so I was like, I guess I got the Godfathers on here
You sure did.
in
Nice
the
work.
space. Well, cool, dude. I appreciate it. Thanks again.
Thanks so much, Ryan.
All
Bye.
right, peace.